Simon Show made a great point once. A broken clock is not right, because it is not capable of telling you anything other than its time of death. Shout out to Simon Show and his excellent lessons. Go check him out. He's a great platform. And his lesson here is that you don't have to hand it to bigots and assholes for being right occasionally, when all they do is just sit and die on a fixed position, hoping to be right one day. That is, just because they're right about something doesn't mean they came about that knowledge in the right way. And this is what I think about in the case of Jason Arday. Jason Arday was the youngest black professor to ever be granted a position of teaching at Cambridge University. And he had a pretty impressive story of overcoming childhood violence, besting learning disabilities and cognitive disorders, running ultramarathons, and a whole host of fascinating hurdles. He was accused by a fellow academic, Nathan Kaufness, of being a plagiarist. Now, Nathan Kaufness was and is a very controversial figure. He was most known for his belief and desire to study and uphold the belief that there are IQ differences between different racial groups, beliefs that got him fired from his college in Cambridge. So you can imagine that somebody like that accusing somebody like Jason Arday of being a fraud isn't going to come off correctly, and that's how most news media treated him at first. Now, after being fired, Kaufness made as big a stink as he could until he could get somebody on his side to investigate Arday in Cambridge, and basically leveled a national level campaign against Arday, ripping apart as much of his story as possible. And Arday made a bunch of unforced errors that made people start to question his stories about his life, and some of the claims that he made about the pressure and scrutiny he was receiving. People started tearing that stuff apart and finding out that there probably is something to the claims that, even if it's not academic dishonesty, because that investigation never came back and said that there was, there might be some embellishment to some of the stories he's telling. It's hard to know the truth in this scenario because everything is so muddied in all this bullshit. Kaufness's plagiarism investigation is inherently flawed because of his bias, but could be damning if true. I don't have Cambridge's academic standards or any of his other peers' work to compare, and I don't have his original work to compare, so all we have to go off of is Kaufness's word on this whole thing. Most news coverage of this is pretty bare bones, but I think that my quick, snap, easy conclusion about all this is that Kaufness could have been right, but he's a bad messenger. Similarly, Cambridge could have been right, but in their attempt to not seem racist, could have elevated a charlatan. But my biggest issue with this situation is that it shows how black people are not allowed to stand alone. This situation is not a representation of DEI gone rogue or woke out of control, as conservative media needs us to be convinced. But this is an example of liberal white folks overlooking some pretty glaring issues and potential controversies in the hopes that they'd have black excellence extreme, when just elevating good old-fashioned black excellence would have done the trick. But the flip side of this is that we as black people end up having to find a way to either distance ourselves from people like this or fight tooth and nail to defend them despite the credibility of the assault, because the people bringing them down want all of us to be gone in a similar manner. And the overarching effect of having to defend or distance ourselves from shit like this is that we as black people are never treated as individuals. We are always treated in relation to the best and / or worst of the people of our same skin color. To put it more concisely, black people defended OJ knowing OJ didn't give a fuck about black people, knowing he killed them folks, because the result of not defending OJ would be decades of sanctioned over-policing of evil, violent black people. And now, Jason Arday is damaging black academia, while the real damage is the black academic friends that we lose along the way.